Now, I want to introduce three particular terms that are going to become very important for this week and for next week. I'm going to go into them a bit more next week with the reading. Now, I want to introduce those terms in a preliminary way, just so you understand what I mean by them, because it's going to be difficult for me to talk about the documentary and film as document without bringing up this very important idea of the index. So what do I mean by index? Well, I'm actually invoking this philosopher's three categories of signs. The philosopher is an American pragmatist philosopher named C.S. Peirce. He became very important in later film theory for people trying to understand early accounts of what photography was. Why is photography so special? The idea was that the photographic or cinematic image's status as a document is tied to its indexical powers. Basically, we can think of index and the indexicality of photography as like a special and precise way of understanding something that I think most of us intuit, which is the idea that if I take a photograph of an apple and I show you the picture of the apple, you believe that that picture is not just a representation of an apple, it is also a document of that apple that existed in the past. This is indexical. Why? Because an index is a kind of sign that shows evidence for the existence of what it refers to, like a footprint, like a weather vane, or like a bullet hole. Think of those individual things that we encounter as signs. And what is a sign? A sign is just anything that stands in for something else that isn't there. Like the word tree stands in for this idea of tree. And I can tell you the word tree without having trees nearby to point to. Index is a kind of sign that points to or shows the evidence for the existence of a particular material thing that was there in the world, like the foot that was there, that I assume to be there if I see its footprint. I can distinguish this from two other really important and common types of signs. The icon is probably the kind of sign we're most familiar with. An icon is a thing that has a physical resemblance to the thing that's being presented. A figurative painting, or a painting in which you recognize particular things, like the Mona Lisa, is not a photograph of a woman. It is a representation or an iconic sign of a woman that we're calling Mona Lisa. And a symbol is a kind of sign that doesn't have a resemblance to a thing in the world. It has no resemblance between the signifier and the signified. The connection between them must be culturally learned. What's a great example of a symbolic sign? Words. Remember that tree I mentioned earlier? Think about the word tree, both in its visual form as T, R, E, and E, or in its heard form, the sound tree, or if you speak Spanish, arbol. Think about all the languages in which a particular sound stands in for that thing that has bark and has leaves and that flows in the wind. The sound tree has no resemblance to that thing out there. It doesn't have the same connection to that thing out there that a painting of a tree does. That's why we call it symbolic. It's an artificial, or rather it's an arbitrary relationship to the thing. It's just cultural convention. Part of the reason I'm making this distinction is so that we understand that in the history of film theory, film has been understood to have a special relationship to the index. People believe that film, unlike painting and unlike words, has an indexical relationship to the thing that it shows us, almost like it provides evidence for the existence of the things that it shows us. In other words, we might say it documents or provides a document of the thing that it shows.